back to another episode of Us Anxious Folk. My name is Lauren. You'll notice if you're watching the video version that there's a little bit of a change of scenery today. I've just moved to the other side of the room briefly. I'm just moving things around. So yes, welcome to the opposite side of the room that we usually don't film on. Today's episode is going to be short and sweet, but I wanted to talk about how to let the fear come with you, because this is something that I have been talking about a lot for a while. I say it to a lot of people, but I know that there's it's sort of like, okay, you can say that, you can say let the fear come with you, but how do you actually go about that? And it took me quite a few years to kind of get the hang of it. Not to say that it's going to take you a few years if it's something that you want to start doing, but it took me a while to, I guess, drop the resistance to panicking and drop the urge to change the way I was feeling, because I think for a long time, for me anyway, I was looking around and seeing that other people weren't struggling as much as I was with like everyday things. You know, like, why was I the only one who was so afraid to get in the car and drive 5 minutes down the road when my friends were going on, backpacking trips around the world? Like, I was so frustrated by the fact that I was more afraid than most of the other people I knew, and that was the thing that I was most hung up on. So whenever the fear was there, I was so offended by its presence and so frustrated by that. My focus was on trying to get rid of the fear and trying to get to a place where my friends were, where, trying to get to a place where I could travel and not be afraid, like not think about where's the closest bathroom and what if I panic and what if I can't get off the plane and which hotel am I going to need to book that means that I can, safely escape if I need to, which is that just doesn't exist. But you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be able to exist in the world without constantly ruminating about everything and trying to micromanage everything. And so, yeah, I was so focused on trying to get to that stage that I skipped the relevance and the importance of letting the fear be there. But then once I learned that, once I figured out how to do that and started to really practice it earnestly, that's when everything shifted. And that's when, having a day where I had a panic attack didn't necessarily knock me. Of course, there are still days that I do panic and I am affected by it, but it's not anywhere near as often as it used to be. It used to be weekly, daily. Now it's like once every 6 months, maybe once every, I guess it depends on what's going on in my life, obviously. But for the most part, when I panic, it's just not so much a big deal. And even if things happen in my life that trigger feelings of fear and abandonment and pain and, all that yucky stuff, or if I experience a setback, I still find that I'm able to welcome the bad feelings and sit with them and process them, rather than being so annoyed at the fact that they're there and trying my hardest to fix that. So with that babbling over, how do we bring the fear with us? So I've kind of already covered why it's important, but I think in order to really open ourselves towards the fear, we need to really understand what it is, and really at its like a purest form, I think for a lot of us, it's the sensations that we're scared of related to the fear, not so much the thoughts. But either way, it's adrenaline. It's adrenaline flooding through your body that is causing physiological changes and is also causing your brain to start running through those thoughts of like, what if this happens? What if that happens? The catastrophic black or white, thinking where everything feels terrifying, and your thoughts are reinforcing that, and the sensations in your body are reinforcing that. But basically it's just adrenaline, and we become really afraid of the fact that that adrenaline is there, and we want to know how to get rid of that so that we can do the things that we want to do. And that's why we're always looking for a new medication or a new therapy, or like a breathing technique or a distraction technique, or some kind of tool that is going to work really quickly to eliminate the adrenaline in our body so that we can do what we need to do without having that feeling there. But I think that focusing on that is kind of where we like dig a deeper hole for ourselves. Like it's like we're digging into the sand deeper and deeper, trying to find our way out, without realizing that if we just stood up and like looked around, we would see our way out. So yeah, just noticing that it is adrenaline and nothing else is a really soothing way to get to know the fear, because once you acknowledge that it's just a chemical hormonal shift in your body, then everything else makes sense. Like the heart racing makes sense, the changes in vision make sense, the numb hands and feet make sense, the thoughts make sense, the feeling of like disassociation and derealization makes sense. Yeah, like it all comes down to that change in our like physiology. And then we're like, okay, so all of the things that are happening in our body are less alarming to a degree. Like there's still those sensations are designed to be alarming, so they still feel alarming, but there's not that added association of like, what the fuck is going on in my body right now? So we acknowledge that it's just adrenaline, and it's just like it's causing all these changes for a reason. And then we acknowledge that the more we label it as something that shouldn't be here, the worse it gets. So the more strain we're putting on our system, because what we're actually doing is we're trying to get rid of the adrenaline by throwing more adrenaline at it. So we're creating more tension in our bodies, we're creating more of a stress response, we're perpetuating the stress response, we're stimulating the stress chemicals, we're stimulating that fight or flight response. And so the very feelings that we're trying to get rid of are the very feelings that we are then creating. So the point of that is you don't label it as something that shouldn't be there. So everything that you're feeling in your body, it's allowed to be in your body. In fact, it's necessary for it to be in your body. It's a good thing that it's there. It's a good thing that your adrenaline works the way it should. It's firing up this response in you, and you want it to do that in the situations that you need it to do that in. But obviously you don't want it to do that when you're like just having lunch with your friends. But you don't get there by trying to get rid of the feeling. You get there by letting it be present, letting it be a part of everything you do. So those are the first two points. Acknowledge that it's adrenaline, and don't label it as something that shouldn't be there. It should be there right now. Given the circumstances, it should be there, and it's totally okay that it's there, and we're not going to fight it. We're not going to try and minimize it or suppress it. We're just going to let it be in our body. We're just going to let it have a seat at the table. The other thing that helps is when we notice those sensations in our body. So you guys know that for me, it's always that like a gurgling in my gut, that constriction of blood vessels in my tummy, and the sort of shifting of blood, and the way your digestive system kind of shuts off when you're in fight or flight. That for me, those particular sensations, I've learnt to label as something bad is going to happen right now. Like I'm going to have some kind of bowel accident that I don't want to have. I'm going to need the bathroom. I have to find a bathroom. For other people I speak to, it's like they have that sensation of feeling faint, and they're going to faint, and they're going to pass out. They're not going to be able to control themselves. They're going to, they're going to be in a situation that they can't control, and they can't cope with that. For others, it's feeling sick. That feeling of nausea, like I'm starting to notice that I feel nauseous, and that means I might throw up, and then that's a whole host of other problems. And so basically every physical sensation that we notice, we then are like that sensation is indicative that that's what's going to happen. So that gurgling in my stomach, I'm like, okay, I'm going to need the bathroom. I need to find the bathroom. Now I'm going to be anxious because I can't find a bathroom, and I'm going to panic. And it's this whole chain of events, this chain reaction. I want you to practice remembering that the fact that that sensation is there is not because it's an indication of what's going to happen. The fact that that sensation is there, again, is just coming back to that adrenaline. So you have taught yourself through repetition that when that sensation comes up, that chain of events happens, but it doesn't. It doesn't happen. You've made that the channel that the panic runs through, if that makes sense. It's like you've created this like groove in the wood where the water easily runs through. So, your panic, that's the path it takes. It doesn't have to take that path. It can purely just be a noticing of the fact that there's adrenaline running through your body, and then you just keep doing whatever you're doing and you just let it be there, and then it dissipates. Like sometimes a good way to deal with that excess adrenaline is to do some exercise in that moment. I used to go for like walks around the block and like charge off some energy. And that's a good tactic, but it's not entirely necessary. It's just sometimes it's a good kind of gateway into like learning how to just notice that it's adrenaline, and that it eases once you use that energy, once you utilize that energy. But yeah, so you don't have to tell yourself that that sensation means that this is going to happen. That sensation doesn't mean that at all. That sensation just means that that sensation is there. It's just adrenaline causing that reaction in your body, and all it means is that reaction is there. Like, you don't have to follow the whole pathway of like, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I hope that made sense. The other thing on that note is to not label it as a bad experience that sensation is there. Similar to what I was saying about like don't try and label the fact that the fear is there as something that shouldn't be happening. Don't label that sensation as something bad. So in a sort of a real life example, I'm sitting in a meeting at work and I notice that I'm having a panic attack, and like I could start to feel really shitty about that and panicked, and like I'm like, this is bad, like this is a bad day at work because I am having a panic attack in a meeting and I'm just not comfortable and this is not okay and I feel like I can't breathe and that's bad. Instead of labeling it as a bad occurrence, a bad situation, a bad experience to be having, either label it as neutral, it just is what it is, it's just adrenaline, it is what it is. I would go further than that. I would actually label it as a good experience. It's a good thing that I'm having this panic attack in this meeting. And this isn't like some kind of Jedi mind trick where it's like you're trying to, fool yourself into thinking like, oh, this is actually like really good. I'm enjoying this. I'm actually excited right now. It's actually just acknowledging that the more we have these uncomfortable situations that we're placed in, the more we can open to that, the more practiced we get at building resilience and, building courage and learning like what we can do and what we're made of and how we can parent ourselves through something. So it's not a bad thing that we learn how to emotionally and physically find safety through discomfort. That's actually a really good thing. It's going to be a good thing for the rest of our lives that we have had that experience. Similar to the way that I think about, the fact that I ever ended up experiencing agoraphobia and panic disorder. Like, it's actually ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me, despite also being the most painful and the most heart-wrenching and the most messed up. It's also taken me to so many amazing places, and I've met so many amazing people, and it's been really good. So don't label it as a bad thing that those sensations are there. Just label it as actually quite a good thing that you're learning how to find safety within, whether that's through discomfort or through comfort. Either way, it's good. The other thing about letting fear come along with you, I think the more practiced you get at it, the more you start to limit distraction and be fully with your fear. So when I first started doing exposure sessions and, getting in the car and being a passenger in the car, which used to scare the shit out of me, I would distract. And that also used to be like something I'd tell people for when you're trying to get out of the house for the first time. Like, distract yourself, like take a book with you, listen to audio tapes, listen to music, like play a game on your phone, or just like whatever, like just distract yourself, because it's kind of a way to get through that initial hump of adrenaline. But the more you practice, the better it is when you start to go, you know what, I actually don't need these distractions. I don't need to look at my phone right now. I don't need to listen to an audio tape. I actually kind of just want to be with every single sensation that's here, every facet of my adrenaline. I want to learn what really happens, like what happens in my body when I feel this charge of adrenaline. Where do I feel it first? What sensations arise when I'm actually really noticing them without judgment, rather than trying to suppress them or run away from them? So if you feel open to it, see if you can start opening to it. Like, see if you can start really being with the fear and let it be there, and like sit with it. Don't let it be there and like turn your back on it and just like pretend that it's not present. Like, you're letting it be there, but you're just not paying any attention to it. Pay attention to it. It really does make a difference when, instead of paying attention to your fear as in a reaction, like, oh my God, the fear is here. What am I going to do? How am I going to fix this? What can I do to change the feelings? Instead of being with it in that way and paying attention to it in that way, you're literally just paying attention to it by noticing exactly how it feels, exactly what happens, and not needing to do anything about it, just watching how it occurs in your body. You really start to get to know your emotions better when you're willing to do that. And it's not always comfortable. Like, the very nature of fear is that it isn't comfortable. Like, it's deeply uncomfortable. But again, that's not a bad thing to learn to be with that. Just because something's uncomfortable doesn't mean that we should turn away from it. A lot of the things that are most uncomfortable are things that we actually really need to turn towards in order to befriend and get to know, and stop feeling so messed up by the fact that they are there and they're a part of our human psyche. That's how we get to know ourselves better, and I think that's how we really find a sense of wholeness. I hope that this episode was helpful. I hope that gave you a little insight into how to actually start to include fear in your movements, rather than just saying like, yeah, let fear be there. It's like, how? I hope this helped you find your how. And yeah, I hope you're all doing really well, and I will see you next time. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Us Anxious Folk podcast, the podcast for the chronically overwhelmed, perpetually panicked, anxious folk in all of us. If you would like to find more about me, you can find me on YouTube at Lauren Rose or on Instagram at LaurenR_Rose.